So next up, we're joined by a graduate teacher who has been working with the Theatre Green Book in a secondary school. And I do find this really interesting because the earlier we can get the theatre makers of the future engaged with, the Theatre Green Book, the better. But how can drama teachers simplify and draw out the flavour of the Theatre Green Book without bamboozling younger learners? Here to share some of brilliant insights and ideas is artistic director and former secondary school teacher, Jamie Saul. Over to you, Jamie. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. Just going to share my screen. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for having me here, Katie, and thanks for being here, everyone else. So I'm Jamie. I am an early career theatre director and producer, and I specialise in working with young people and other early career artists in making sustainable and collaborative work, which engages with the Green Book. For part of the last academic year, I've been working at St Paul's School in West London and helping them to develop a sustainability strategy for their drama department. I also make my own small-scale theatre work engaging with the Green Book. So I'm by no means an expert, but I've been fortunate enough to work in environments which have been engaging with the Green Book, and especially at St Paul's, which is a school that had enough resources to give me the time and space to think and learn about making theatre sustainably and how that can be translated to a secondary school environment. It's those thoughts and lessons that I'm going to be sharing today to hopefully give you some ideas about how to adapt and engage with the Theatre Green Book at a secondary level. I'm going to start by talking through some ways into introducing the Green Book into the secondary school drama experience. Then I will talk more specifically about GCSE and A level opportunities, so engaging with the Green Book with those two exams. And then I will move on to thinking about some extracurricular opportunities, including trips and some wider opportunities as well in the professional side of the industry, but also with other schools and within your school with other departments. The aim of all of this, as I say, is to just give, hopefully, secondary school education providers loads of ideas in terms of what you can be doing and how to engage with the Green Book. And really, just to say that the best thing to do is doing something, is picking one of these options and going with it. Starting somewhere is the best thing to do. If you're here, I'm hoping that it's because you agree that this is really important. So I'm not going to dwell too much on why this is important. Hopefully you already are on board with that. I'm going to be thinking more about the what and the how and less the general why, as I say. But I do think the why should you is important. So I'll keep referring back to that throughout this. Generally, I think that's split into three areas. Why should you do this? Adopt the theatre agreement within your school, within your subject. It's a way of illuminating for your students what the professional theatre making process is, as well as integrating the sustainable theatre making practice into that, acknowledging that this is the way the wind is blowing in the professional side of the industry and what that looks like and will continue to look like. Why should you do it within your school? Well, I think it's a way of advocating for drama. It's a way of embracing the collaborative spirit that the Theatre Green Book encourages and using that to work with other departments in your school, as well as looking beyond your school and working with other schools to try and make work more sustainably and share resources, and potentially battle a bit against the increasingly draining funding for drama provision within school. So why should you, outside of your school, engaging with other schools, but also engaging with the professional side of the industry and hoping to bridge that gap a little bit between education provision and the professional side of the theatre industry, and looking at that as more of a in a single thing. So I'll refer back to all of those things throughout what I'm talking about today. So in terms of ways in, when I was speaking to industry professionals, when I was first putting together a pitch for St Paul's about how to engage with the Green Book and how to work sustainably in the drama department, a lot of people just said to me, just read the Green Book and follow the amazing structure that the Green Book lays out. That, I think, is the best way to start. Looking at the Green Book itself and looking at what the structure of it is. I think that's a great way to start for you yourself as a education provider, as a teacher in a secondary school, but also to look at it with the students. It starts, as we've heard earlier today, with the thinking about the circular production cycle. And I think this is a brilliant way into thinking about all of this, particularly the making theatre in a sustainable way. So it really clearly says where you should be having these meetings to think about sustainability, where you should be kind of invoking this sustainability thought process within the cycle of a production. But because you're talking about how to make a show in its entirety, you're also illuminating what goes into making theatre in a professional environment. And that has all sorts of benefits when you're talking about that with young people. You're illuminating all of the jobs that go into making a show, from production management to producing to lighting design to the finance department in theatres and in organisations. It's shedding light on all of those things, and I think that's a really important grounding as you're starting to introduce this to young people. I think the second thing that it's is a really good way in is the production calculator, formerly the materials inventory. These are just some slides here from some of the work I did with St Paul's, some of the materials inventories we use there. So this is a really accessible tool. I think it also lays out really clearly a step-by-step process for making theatre in a sustainable way. You're thinking about the origins of materials, the origins of the things that you're using. You're thinking about how you're using them, when you're using them on your show, and then where they're going afterwards. And if you're approaching this with young people, I think that is a really clear kind of three-step process, if you like, to guide young people through. I think you can also pair this with work that you are making or you're watching, and I'll come back to that in a second. So the next thing I'm going to think about is a GCSE and A level integration with the Green Book. How can we marry those two things together? I would say I think it's important not to be afraid of just looking at the Green Book and looking at sustainable theatre making as a unit in its own right in a scheme of work, including in GCSE and A level or before that. I think the production calculator is great because it can be understood by people of a younger age as well, certainly in year 9 and maybe even below that. But in GCSE and A level, using those tools I've talked about as a way in, going in with the circular production cycle, going in with the production calculator, and using that as part of a unit on its own. If you did want to engage with the exams, with the GCSE and A level exams, I think you could bring in sustainable theatre making and thinking about that with the design questions. So and especially if you can find a way to engage with the content of the play. So the example that I came up with was, if you're doing Jerusalem as part of the A-level spec, then you could think about the fact that Jerusalem is obviously set in the countryside. It's obviously set in a caravan sort of in the middle of nowhere. Can you use sort of found materials to make that set, to make everything that's within that environment? And that links with the content of that script and that show, but also with the Green Book and also with sustainable practice. So it's using, as the Green Book talks about, using sustainability as a parameter within your design question answer, rather than any kind of limiting factor. I think you could also bring it in the live theatre review question, if there's any design discussion there. Has the production that you're doing a live theatre review of got any green credentials? Can the students get in touch with the people who made the show? Can they find out more about that, what they were doing to make their production sustainable as they were making it? And that's a great way to put some pressure on the professional side of the industry as well. If a production manager has a bunch of students emailing them asking for their green credentials, hopefully that'll push them to want to make those even better. So I think those are two ways that you could bring it into the written side of a GCSE or A-level exam. Teachers have expressed to me that adding those sort of that flavour in is a great way of making top band marks, high band marks even better. It's worth definitely checking with exam boards how they feel about this sort of thing. And hopefully, again, a bunch of teachers emailing exam boards asking about sustainability, asking about the Green Book, asking about all these things, again, puts a bit of pressure on exam boards to include this within their specifications. I think you could also use this in your devised work. So if you're making a devised piece or any kind of exam piece, can you do that in an environmentally conscious way? Can you link that to using a production calculator? Can you link that to the meetings that the Green Book lays out as part of the circular process? How can you actually do that in a small way during your practical exams? And then can you write about that in the working notebook, in the accompanying notes? Maybe that's another way that you can add all of this into what you're doing at GCSE and A level. Beyond that, outside of the academic sphere of things within schools, I think looking at the extracurricular side of things is really important and a great place to start. You could engage with Green Book while you are making your school show as if it were a professional production. And you could do that invisibly as a teacher or as a practitioner or education provider if you wanted to, while you were still learning about it all and how it all works and how it could work for you. Or you could do it with a group of students and hand some of it over to them. You could do that either in lessons if you wanted to and have that as part of your sustainability unit, or you could do it in a technical theatre club or any kind of drama club. In terms of what that means, I think that would mean using the production calculator and talking through exactly what all of that means. Again, talking through why we're using weight, what the delineation of different materials is, all of these sorts of things. Referring back to the Green Book for those meetings, when those meetings should happen, what those meetings are, even if that meeting is just between you, the director, and everything else of a show, and another member of your department or another member of a department, or a young person, just to kind of work through that process and illuminate that process for yourself, but also for the students. You could also do a sustainability report of previous shows that you've done if you wanted to, and do a retrospective materials inventory or production calculator. You'll see it on the screen now. That's what I did for a show that we did at St Paul's prior to me starting this work. You could also have a target to aim for. Obviously, there's the three targets of basic, baseline, intermediate, or advanced targets within the Green Book. If you wanted to aim for those, I think you definitely could with your extracurricular productions. Equally, you could choose not to do that if you wanted to. At St Paul's, we decided to not use those parts because St Paul's has loads of great resources already in terms of technical stuff and in terms of sets and scenery and costumes and those sorts of things. So our numbers were slightly skewed because we had all that stuff, but we were still relying on Amazon and ASOS for last minute deliveries. So it was kind of messing up our final calculations, and it was making us look even better than we were doing, but it would have allowed us to ignore some of the areas where we could have improved. So deciding what you can what is useful for you to use and what is less useful, I think, is important to emphasize with all of this. So tracking all of those things through a production, through the show that you are making at school, and acknowledging also that that will be extra work for you and your department and anyone who's helping with your show. I think that's why giving some of this work to a student or committee of students could be a really beneficial thing for everyone involved. Yourself as someone who's making a show and trying to balance that with all of the other things that are on your plate, but also as a way to teach them what this process is in a really kind of hands-on way, which is hopefully really useful for everyone. Okay, I also think that trips are a really good way to, and watching theatre are a really good way to bring in all of this work as well. So there we are. So there are loads of productions that are available to watch online through various different subscriptions, which are Theatre Green Book case studies, which are available on the Theatre Green Book website. And engaging with those, watching that show and then looking at the accompanying material feels like it's a really fertile ground for great discussion in class. So you could watch the version of Good with David Tennant in, and then you could look through the accompanying case study on the Theatre Green Book website. Students could give a presentation on that, and you could even try and get in touch with, again, the production team and try and find some of the materials that were used and try and do a production calculator calculation based on that information if you could find it. That again feels like really good ground for that. Or if you're watching theatre live, you could, again, email production teams, putting pressure on the professional side of the industry to try and see what their green credentials are. That feels really important as well. All of this, as I say, I think offers loads and loads of opportunity for collaboration. First of all, within your school. We found at St Paul's that the design department were doing great work with sustainability that we didn't know about. And looking at ways that the drama department and the design department could link up on that work felt like a really important opportunity to hold on to and to try and pursue, especially as STEM is so emphasized in schools and drama is so lacking in funding and emphasis and being kind of empowered. If we can, this feels like a way to attach a drama department to a STEM department to hopefully kind of try and advocate for the work that drama is doing. I think it's also an opportunity to work with other schools. So St Paul's was part of the West London Partnership Schools Network, which is a group of schools of all types, independent schools, state-funded schools, grammar schools, etc. It's a network of schools that already pools and shares resources. And I think a lot of schools are part of those networks to varying degrees, using those existing networks as a way to pool resources to say, we've got loads of great technical equipment, let's share that with you. You've got some great costumes, let's borrow that from you. And hopefully those existing networks can be utilised to pool resources and as a way of combating funding that is obviously draining so much from school drama departments in a way that will help everyone's green credentials, but also help everyone kind of realise the ambition of their shows to a really exciting level. I think it also makes drama a subject which collaborates really visibly and is creative really visibly. Obviously, we know drama is a subject that's creative, but we're thinking creatively in terms of how we make things, not just in terms of the performance aspect of shows, which I think is really important. Again, it's an opportunity to work with the professional side of the industry as well. So the effect of all of this is making the case for drama in schools. As I say, it's a way of showing an industry which is forward thinking and forward planning and is trying to respond to the world in which we find ourselves, showing the inherent collaboration and creativity that's through all of that. And hopefully it's an opportunity to work against the loss of funding in schools by sharing resources and maybe engaging with the aims of your school as an organisation and your young people as well. Please also shout about this work if you do it. I think that's one of the most important things, is just saying that you're doing it. It's such a big thing. I want to end by saying that the only enemy really to all of this is inaction. I think whatever you do, and I really implore you to do something, will have a positive effect, whether it's just doing one production calculation for a show and then starting to think about it from there. It will be hopefully light a fire in someone and definitely have a positive effect in the work you're doing. And I'm going to end there. Thank you to Katie and Code for all of this for today. If you have any questions or want to talk to me about any of this, you can email me, jamie@bravemirror.com. And that's it. Also, if you're a drama teacher, could you pop something in the chat to say you're here and you're a drama teacher, and hopefully this is interesting and exciting.
Thank you so much, Jamie. There was so much in there that was absolutely brilliant, especially this idea of STEM subjects and, maybe using the production calculator as part of a maths lesson, because, it's a really great way to bring that kind of stuff to life, isn't it, in a maths lesson, sort of to show they're working on